Tonight, a plan to bring dozens of Australian women and their children home from Syria. Also tonight, growing anger over the events leading up to a deadly stampede at an Indonesian soccer match. ACT authorities pledge to get more Canberrans living with disability back into their own homes. And partying in Penrith, Panthers fans celebrate their team's back-to-back premiership success. Yuma, good evening. Adrian Francis with ABC News. Dozens of Australian women and their children in northeast Syria could soon be repatriated. After years in detention camps, the federal government is planning to bring them back home. It insists the group will be monitored closely, but the coalition is warning it's too dangerous. Here's political reporter Stephanie Boris.
Many left Australia as teenagers, some tricked into travelling, others too young to have a say.
I want to go back home and live a normal life with my sisters and my mum.
And that could soon become a reality. Officials visited Syria earlier this year to verify the identities of the Australian women and their children, most family members of Islamic State group fighters.
We've got about 40 Australian kids living in one of the most dangerous places on earth.
They've been living in camps in northeast Syria since 2019.
I travelled to the camps in June this year, and they are among the worst places in the world to be a child, so the repatriation can't come soon enough from our perspective.
Kamal Debussi's daughter and 3 grandchildren are in Syria. In a statement, he says the welfare of these children is paramount and the families just want to welcome them home and would happily cooperate with all levels of government. The former government didn't repatriate the group due to national security concerns and is still opposed to the plan.
I think it puts people at risk to go in and rescue these people from Syria. It poses a potentially enormous risk to the Australian community.
Germany, Sweden, France and Denmark have already brought their citizens home. So too has the United States, and it's offered to help other countries. The women have agreed to be subject to control orders if they return, which could see their every move tracked.
Our security and intelligence agencies will stay in contact with them and monitor them.
What makes us safer is to actually get people to reintegrate and to support Australian society and believe that Australian society can actually be a place for them.
Repatriation just the start of a long process involving surveillance and reintegration. Stephanie Boris, ABC News, Canberra.
The Indonesian government has announced an independent investigation into the soccer stampede that left at least 125 people dead. 17 children are among those killed and hundreds more were injured. Indonesia correspondent Anne Barker reports from Malang in East Java.
The players from Arema Soccer Club, still in shock and overcome with grief. Pictures of police with shields kicking and hitting fans have been spreading on social media. Anger is growing over the use of tear gas in the stadium. Police fired canisters into the crowds. Thousands panicked and piled up against narrow exits.
Many people got stomped on, and there was so much tear gas. People tried to get out, but couldn't because the doors were locked.
Some managed to break through a wall to get out. Police defended the use of tear gas, saying it was necessary to subdue fans rioting over their team's loss. In East Java and the capital, they came to mourn. The death toll was revised down. Indonesian authorities said some victims were counted twice. But the number of injured rose to more than 300. Many are teenagers.
The football world is in a state of shock. This is a dark day for football and the tragedy beyond comprehension.
Investigators have arrived at the stadium to begin collecting evidence. The Indonesian government has announced an investigation into the deadly stampede. The chief security minister says it'll help find the perpetrators behind this disaster. Two brothers, only 14 and 15 years old, were among the first to be buried. It was the only time they'd ever been to a match to see their team play.
These two children were quiet, obedient, and did not act out much. My family and I didn't think it would turn out like this.
People keep coming to offer their prayers, hoping for answers and justice.
And Indonesia correspondent Anne Barker joins me now from Malang. Anne, how are people there coping with this terrible tragedy?
Adrienne, obviously there's devastation here, but also anger. Even those who were at the match just can't understand how this was allowed to happen. People on social media are calling the authorities behind this, the police, the security forces, murderers and killers. They just want answers from the various inquiries that have been announced. But there is also deep grief. I was at a hospital earlier today where some of the injured have been taken. More than 300 people are still injured, and many of those have trauma injuries like broken bones, others a lack of oxygen. Some are still in intensive care, so it's feasible that the death toll could still rise. But everywhere you go, at the ground, at the hospitals around the town of Malang, there is a real suffering that you can feel. It's palpable.
Anne Barker reporting from Malang in East Java. Almost 2 weeks after the Optus cyber attack exposed the personal details of 10 million Australians, the telco has today confirmed more details about the data breach. CEO Kelly Bayer Rosmarin said 1.2 million customers need to take further action and should have already been contacted by Optus. A further 900,000 customers had an expired identity document number exposed and will be given more information on what action they need to take. Optus has hired consulting company Deloitte to run an external independent review of the data breach. The move comes after the company was criticised by the government and the customers for its slow response. Property prices are continuing to fall nationally and it's unclear how low they'll go. Canberra saw one of the biggest drops, with values decreasing by 1.6% in September and nearly 4.5% in the past quarter. Interest rates are the biggest factor pushing down the market, and tomorrow the Reserve Bank is expected to hike the cash rate again.
Katrina and Minlee aren't sure whether to buy now or hold off.
Because the market is very uncertain at the moment, and there might be a crash coming up.
The apartment they're considering just dropped its asking price by $20,000.
Just because of the interest rates going up and buyer interest, we've got to bring it down.
Prices fell in every capital city, bar Darwin, in September, with Sydney, Brisbane and Canberra leading the falls. Properties are also declining in regional Australia. Nationally, prices are down 1.4% for the month and 5.5% off the pandemic boom.
Overall values are still sitting about 20% higher since the onset of COVID.
Prices have been dropping for 5 months, but the decline is slowing.
We don't know if it's a plateau.